My sister got the whole inheritance, and I was left with a single euro. Don't spend it all at once, they mocked. But when that euro turned into millions, they came back with a look of regret. I recently shared this story on a forum about family injustices. The response was huge. Some thought I made it up. Others identified with it and shared similar experiences. But this isn't fiction. This is what I experienced. It all started the day my grandfather's will was read. We were summoned to the notary's office. My mother, my father, my sister Natalia, and me. My brother Luis didn't even show up. His business on the Costa del Sol seemed more important to him than any family drama. I wasn't expecting much, but at least something with a certain sentimental value. My grandfather had money, not enough to appear on magazine covers, but enough, so that no one in the family had to worry too much about the future. The reading was quick and clear. Natalia received the property in Marbella, the account with the family savings and the shares in the company. The notary paused and then said my name. I'd been awarded €1. I thought it was a mistake. My mother didn't look at me. She just sighed. My father, as always, remained silent. Natalia smiled. Well, €1 is money too, she said. Luis, who had shown up at the last minute, couldn't hold in his laughter. Don't spend it all at once, he said between laughs, and everyone laughed. I didn't say anything. I took the envelope with the note and saved any emotion for later. The truth is, I wasn't that surprised. My grandfather never thought much of me. He wasn't cruel, but I simply wasn't what he considered a good granddaughter. He was one of those men who believed he was always right in everything, and anyone who wasn't right was discarded. Natalia understood this from an early age and knew how to play the role he wanted her to play. She always told him what he wanted to hear. You're right, Grandpa. You're very wise, Grandpa. And he treated her like gold. I, on the other hand, had a bad habit of asking questions, arguing, and keeping quiet. I've never been good at pretending someone is right just to make myself look good. One Christmas, I was about 9 years old. He gave Natalia a giant teddy bear. He gave me a small box. It was an old dictionary. Smart girls read, he said, without looking at me very much. My mother smiled and nudged me, as if to say thank you. Thanks, Grandpa, I mumbled. Don't waste your time with nonsense, Claudia, he added, before turning his attention to Natalia. In his world, Natalia was perfect because she didn't challenge him. I, on the other hand, was a nuisance, and that, with him, was costly. If Natalia stumbled, he ran to pick her up. If I scratched my knee, he told me not to make a fuss. When she turned 18, he bought her a car. I had to save every penny to buy. A used bicycle. Over time, I learned not to expect anything from him. And in the end, he did what I had already learned. He left me nothing. After the reading, no one brought up the subject again. There were no calls, no messages, as if that day in the notary's office hadn't passed. But I couldn't get it out of my head. I went back to my 25-square-meter apartment. I threw the envelope with the euro on the table and stared at it. Don't spend it all at once, I muttered, imitating Luis, and I laughed, a strange laugh, the kind that comes out when you're on the verge of something darker. Because if I didn't laugh, I'd probably burst into tears. It wasn't just the money, it was everything it represented. They left me empty-handed and didn't even pretend they cared. I was in red numbers, without a job, without a safety net. I spent that week like a machine, sending out CVs everywhere. Restaurants, stores, offices. I was the same. I was called into a coffee shop to take a test. Long shifts, miserable pay, unbearable customers. I accepted without thinking, and that's when everything started to change. The kind that look like they're straight out of a business magazine cover, impeccable suits, shiny watches, high caliber, conversation. They sat at the back of the room, talking unfiltered about startups, huge figures and profitability. One of them, while sipping his coffee as if it were a prize, quipped, "If a company doesn't generate at least $20,000 a month, it's not worth it." Another, cell phone in hand, replied without looking up, "Money isn't the problem. The problem is how to get it to work for you." Then I froze inside. Not because I dreamed of being in his shoes, but because I didn't. have a penny working for me. I was the one who cleared their tables and served them coffee. That night, when I got home, my feet were raw with exhaustion. I threw myself on the bed with my clothes on, but instead of sleeping, I opened my laptop. It wasn't ambition, it was necessity. I wanted to get out of the pit I'd been left in. I started reading about business, about alternative incomes, about ways of generating something without depending on anyone. The first idea, and the first blow, after endless nights researching. I found a course on selling secondhand goods. It seemed achievable. I had some things in storage that I no longer used, so I uploaded them to a resale app. 3 days passed. Nothing. Then a message arrived. Is it available? And my hands were shaking as I said yes. I sold my first item for 25 euros. It was silly. But it was the first time I'd ever won anything without someone telling me what to do or what time to come and go. I got motivated. I searched the house for more things, opened drawers, emptied cupboards. But there wasn't much left. As soon as I left, I went to secondhand markets. I bought an old jacket for 5 euros and sold it for 30. A handbag for 8 euros. I resold it for 50. And then I understood. It wasn't about having money. It was knowing how to make it work. I didn't need a fixed salary. What I needed was to understand the rules of the game. That was the first piece. The real change came when those who had laughed at me began to realize that I was no longer where they had left me. After my first 1,000 euros, everything picked up speed. The following month, 2,500, then 5,000, then 8,000. The system was almost running itself. Buy, improve, publish, sell. But there was a serious problem. I was exhausted. There were days when I spent more than 14 hours reviewing orders, answering messages, organizing submissions. One afternoon, after answering more than 60 messages in a row, I felt my eyesight getting cloudy. I looked in the mirror. I looked like a shadow. Dark circles that could have been part of the scenery in a horror movie. I had two options: hire someone or collapse. I resisted for a few weeks, but when I started rejecting sales due to lack of time, I realized that the time had come to grow up. I started with Anna, a girl who was in charge of answering messages and uploading ads. Then came Danny, who took care of shipping and organizing all the stock. Then there was Raul, who had contacts with suppliers and obtained exclusive products. Finally, Laura, with experience in digital marketing, boosted our sales as if she had given the business a turbo boost. In 4 months, I went from being alone in front of a computer to leading a team of 6. We were no longer just selling secondhand apps. We created our own online store. We started paying for ads, optimizing shipping, negotiating with large suppliers, and the results came quickly. Revenue tripled. The store was already generating more than 30,000 euros a month, but it wasn't enough. I'd been thinking about opening a physical store for a long time. Selling online worked, yes, but there were products that people wanted to touch, taste, and see in person before deciding I needed a place, a real one. I spent weeks looking. Some places were too expensive. Others were in areas where not a fly could pass. Until I found it, a small space, but with a good location. Just what I needed. I didn't worry so much about the numbers anymore. But I remember exactly the feeling when I signed the contract. A mixture of terror and euphoria. I was putting 50,000 euros into renovating the space. Total madness. But it was my madness. On the day of the opening, I didn't know if anyone would show up, but they did. Lots of people, customers of the online store, curious passers-by, even people who had seen the ads around. We sold almost 8,000 euros on that first day alone. When I closed the store door and was left alone, I looked around and thought, if my grandfather knew about this, he'd be in his grave. Because yes, at the end of the day, I had created a real business. And not just any business, I was already making over 50,000 euros a month. And then it began. The family's nose for money. I hadn't spoken to anyone for almost a year since the reading of the will. I simply disappeared. But all it took was for the store to be featured in an article about new entrepreneurs, for the phone to ring. A message from my mother. "Daughter, I'm so happy to see that you're doing so well. We haven't heard from you. Why don't you come and have dinner with the family?" Of course, no news until my name appeared in the press. 2 days later, it was Natalia's turn. "Auntie, I saw your store. Congratulations. I always knew you'd go far. We need to see each other. I have an idea that might interest you. I always knew I'd go far?" That's funny, because the last time he saw me, he was laughing in my face as the notary handed me €1 as an inheritance, and it didn't stop there. The following week, my father called me. "Daughter, we were thinking, your business is growing so much, the family has to support each other, right? Maybe we can help with the administration." Translation: they want a slice. The next day, a message arrived from Luis. "Hi, Clau. How are things going? I have a friend who's an investor. It would be nice if you'd consider it, after all. We're family. Now we are family." A few days later, my mother showed up in person at the store. The tone of her voice? False. "Too excited to be honest, Claudia. Good to see you." "Just say what you want, Mom." She looked offended. "How can you talk like that? I've just come to see how you're doing, and to tell you that I've been thinking a lot. Maybe it's time you went back to your family." "Go back to the family?" I repeated. "Daughter, don't look at it like that. Your grandfather had a peculiar way. But the important thing is that now we can start again." Start again. Look, Natalia and Luis have spoken to a consultant. They think it would be best to split the company between the four of them. The four of them? Of course. After all, we all helped you get here. I couldn't hold back my laughter. "You helped me?" She was baffled. I hadn't expected to hear that. "Mom, when I was washing dishes in the cafeteria, where were you? When you laughed in my face because of that €1, who helped me?" "Nobody." She remained silent. She pressed her lips together and sent out the classic phrase I'd come to expect. "How selfish you've become." I crossed my arms. "I'm not selfish. I've just stopped being an idiot," as if laughing at me. When they gave me €1 wasn't enough, as if ignoring my existence during the worst of times wasn't enough. Now that the business is going over $50,000 a month, we're family again, and of course they think they're entitled to a share. The first attempt was drama, emotional manipulation. After the conversation in the store, I thought they would stop, but they didn't. Luis came back. "Claudia, think about it. It doesn't make sense to do everything alone. We're your brothers. We've always been a team." "A team?" "The last time he and I were a team was when I was 10 and he convinced me to give him my spare change to buy a video game." My mother tried again. "Daughter, we don't want to pressure you, but families need to support each other, you can't hold grudges. It was your grandfather who hurt you, not us. But it was they who laughed. They were the ones who remained silent. They were the ones who saw Natalia leave with everything and pretended it was normal. And then Natalia texted, again, 'Clau, can we talk in person?' I don't want you to misunderstand our intentions. My intentions are very simple. I want them to leave me just like they did when I was penniless. They weren't willing to take no for an answer." The second attack, the family business trap, a week. Later, my mother insisted that I come to her house for dinner. I'm not sure why I went. Perhaps because deep down I was still curious about how far they would go. When I arrived, everyone was already at the table. Natalia, Luis, my parents. They even brought a lawyer. My mother started by pouring wine as if it were an ordinary dinner. "We know how hard you've been working to get your company off the ground." "Thanks for noticing," I replied with a sarcastic smile. But they continued. "We thought," said my father, with the tone he used when talking about business, "that it would be a good idea to formalize everything and turn it into a family business." "Family business?" I repeated, confused. "Yes," said Luis with a false cordiality that made me feel anxious. "Something more structured. Now that the business is stable, we can help with administration, growth, investments." Natalia gestured and slid a document across the table. "This is a proposal to turn your business into a family partnership. That way, we could all contribute and get a fair share." I raised an eyebrow. "Fair?" "Well, yes. You would get 40% because you started it. The other 60% would be split between Mom, Dad, Luis, and me." I let out a real laugh. "Wait a minute. Are you telling me that you, who haven't done anything, are going to get 60% of my company just because you have the same surname as me?" "Don't look at it like that, Clau," smiled Natalia with an air of superiority. "We're doing this for the good of everyone." "For everyone's sake?" I repeated, incredulous. Luis crossed his arms and adopted an aggressive posture. "You won't be able to manage everything on your own. Sooner or later, you'll need help. It's better to band together now than to have to sell to strangers later. My father nodded, looking like he thought he was being very clever. If you look closely, it's a smart strategy. We keep the business in the family. My mother sighed with that, I'm telling you for your own good tone. We can't continue to be divided, Claudia. It's time to think about the family. And there it was, the fatal phrase. Think of the family. Family is the most important thing. The same people who abandoned me when I needed them most. I picked up the document, took a quick look at it, and looking straight into their eyes, tore it up. My answer is no. Natalia rolled her eyes. Claudia, please don't be childish. Childish? Childish is what you did when you gave me €1 and laughed in my face. Luis slapped the table. You always have to play the victim, don't you? I'm not a victim, Luis. I'm the only one here who's actually worked. My father massaged his forehead, trying to control his anger. Daughter, there's no need to turn this into a fight. I'm not fighting, I said calmly. I'm just not interested in sharing my company with a family that never believed in me. Silence. For the first time, I saw panic in their eyes. They didn't expect me to say no. My mother tried one last low blow. Daughter, we raised you. We gave you everything. I leaned towards her. You gave me nothing, Mom. Ever since I can remember, everything I've achieved has been on my own. I got up, grabbed my bag, and headed for the door. Claudia, my father called, his voice harsh. Don't be silly. This is an opportunity. I turned around and, without hesitation, unleashed the final blow. Yes, an opportunity for you, because I don't need you. And I left. The third attack, the final betrayal. I thought that was the end of it, but no. 2 weeks later, I received an urgent call from my lawyer. Claudia, we need to talk. Your family tried to register a business with the same name as yours. I was in shock. Apparently, they've submitted documents to open a company with a name almost identical to yours. If you don't act quickly, they could steal your customers and damage your image. That was their plan B. If they couldn't take over the company legally, they would try to destroy it to force me to accept their help. They declared war. But what they didn't know was that I was ready to fight. They tried to manipulate me with the excuse of family. They tried to take over my business with papers and lawyers. And when that didn't work, they tried to steal my own name. But they made one mistake. They underestimated me. If you're going to play dirty, then be prepared. After the call with my lawyer, the first thing I did was to shield my company legally. I registered the business name, the trademark rights, and demanded an injunction to block any attempt by my family to operate under a similar name. The next day, Natalia called me. Claw, you're exaggerating. What we've done is totally legal. You tried to steal my company name. It's not yours, you didn't patent it before. And besides, we're family. We could have reached an agreement without lawyers. I laughed. You know what's funny? Before my business was a success, you didn't care about it at all. Silence. We just want everyone to win, she said, trying to play it cool. Win? After you tried to take 60% of my company? Don't look at it like that, Claw. We want what's best for you. Well, what's best for me is that you disappear, I said and hung up, but it wasn't over. In less than a month, my family got into more trouble than they could have imagined. Not only did I register the trademark, but I also reported them for corporate fraud. When Luis tried to open bank accounts with the new business, the banks blocked everything. When Natalia tried to attract customers using my reputation, she received a lawsuit for trademark infringement. And best of all, when they tried to apply Psalms I for a loan to invest in the business, they were rejected. Do you know why? Because the whole family was in debt. Yes, in debt. Because while I was there, working to create something from scratch, they were wasting their inheritance money. Mom, daughter, this has gotten out of hand. We can't allow the family to be destroyed over something silly. My mother tried to convince me. Dad, Claudia, negotiate with us. Don't be selfish, said Luis with a tone of accusation. You've become a despicable person. But when all this is over, you'll need the family. Don't forget that. Yes, of course. In the meantime, I opened my third store, was invited for a television interview, took part in an event for young entrepreneurs, and every time they said my name in public, my family squirmed with rage because they realized there was nothing they could do to stop me. Karma came into its own. I didn't see my family for almost a year. Then one morning, I went into a cafe, and in the background, saw Natalia arguing with a lawyer. I approached, just out of curiosity. "Hi, Natalia," I said as I sipped my coffee. She raised her head and turned as white as a ghost. "What are you doing here?" she asked me with hatred in her eyes. "Just looking at the papers on the table," I replied. I saw an embargo notice, and there I understood everything. They had lost everything. I leaned towards her and smiled. What a shame the family couldn't support themselves, isn't it? The look on her face could have killed me. I turned and walked away, feeling the sweetest victory of my life. They left me with €1, and I left them with nothing, responding to the comments and how I really feel about all this. I didn't expect my story to spread so much here on Reddit. Honestly, I published it because I needed to get it off my chest. I'm still processing everything that's happened, and wow, I've received a lot of responses. Some comments were supportive, from people who have been through similar situations and know what it's like to be the discarded one in the family. Others were harsher. "You're spiteful. Family is family." No matter what, if I had €1 for every time someone said that to me, I'd have an extra store. This idea that family should be untouchable, no matter how much damage it causes, is what keeps so many people trapped in toxic relationships. They left me with nothing, laughed in my face, watched me struggle and didn't care. But when they realized I was succeeding, there they were, not out of love, not because they cared, but because they wanted what I had. So no, I didn't owe them anything. You were cruel. You destroyed your own family. I'll be honest. Yes, I enjoyed watching them fall. When I saw my sister with the embargo papers, when I realized that her arrogance had turned to despair, I felt something I won't deny. Satisfaction because it wasn't accidental. They dug their own grave. Am I a bad person for laughing in their faces? Maybe. But if someone tells me that if they were me, they would have been a saint and reached out after everything, they're lying. But that doesn't mean there isn't something inside me that still weighs on me. At the end of the day, you're still a daughter. You're still a sister. And the question that made me think the most is, are you going to live with this hatred forever? It's not easy to answer because, despite everything, I don't hate my family. Sometimes I wake up at dawn and ask myself, what if things had been different? Sometimes I find myself remembering little good moments, a childhood vacation, my mother doing my hair for school, the time my brother stood up for me in the schoolyard. Those moments disappear because they did what they did. They are no longer my family. And as much as it hurts, I know that at some point in my life I will have to see them again. Perhaps at my mother's funeral, or perhaps when one of them, broken by life, knocks on my door, asking for help. And I don't know what I'll do when that happens. I don't know if I'll have the courage to give them another chance, or if I'll just close the door. I don't know if I'll ever be able to sit at the table with them without feeling angry about everything they've done. What I do know is that, for the first time in my life, the decision will be mine, and at least that gives me peace. Thank you all. For reading and for your comments, good or bad. I don't know what will happen in the future, but for now, I'm going to carry on doing what I do best. Being in charge of my own life,